The villagers froze. Even the goats grazing nearby stopped chewing as the old beggar woman's hands reached for the faded scarf that had always hidden her face. For years, people had avoided her, calling her a curse, a shadow of bad luck. Mothers pulled their children away when she walked past. Men spat on the ground after she greeted them. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her eyes, sharp and full of fire, never left the crowd. Slowly, she pulled the scarf away from her head. The cloth slipped, revealing skin so smooth it didn't match her age, and then a golden pendant, glowing like it carried the sun itself, hanging around her neck. Gasps broke through the silence. She's not a beggar," someone whispered. But before anyone could ask who she truly was, a voice at the back of the crowd shouted, "It's her! She's the only one who can save the village." The air turned heavy. In the heart of Ojibaba village, life was warm, colorful, and full of music. The smell of roasted corn mixed with the laughter of children who chased each other between clay houses. Every morning, women in bright wrappers balanced baskets of fruits on their heads as they strolled to the market, gossiping and laughing about little things. The people of Ojibaba believed in three things: respect for elders, the strength of community, and the saying, "A stranger's eyes may see the snake hiding in your grass." This was a place where everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. Still, not all corners of the village were filled with joy. In the shadow of the large baobab tree near the market sat an old woman wrapped in a long, dusty scarf. She was always there, morning to night, leaning on her wooden staff, her head bowed, her voice low when she asked for food. Her name was Adunni, or at least that was what some people called her. Others called her Age, meaning which, convinced that she brought misfortune. If a child fell sick, someone would say, "She passed near Adunni yesterday." If a goat went missing, the whispers would begin. Maybe the old woman took it. The truth was, no one really knew where she came from. She never spoke about her past, never laughed, never cried. She simply sat there, silent except when she asked softly, "Please, a little food?" Children dared each other to run close to her and touch her scarf before running away screaming. Some adults crossed the road when they saw her coming. Only a few kind hearts, like Mama Beezy, the yam seller, would leave a small bundle of food for her, without a word. One such afternoon, the sun was beginning to sink, painting the sky orange. The market was noisy as usual, with sellers calling out their prices. Adunni sat at her usual spot, quiet. But that day, a boy named Kola, who had always been more curious and afraid, stood watching her. He noticed something strange. When the wind blew hard, her scarf lifted slightly, and he saw a glimpse of gold underneath. Not gold like earrings or bracelets the traders wore. This was brighter, glowing, almost alive. Kola's heart raced. Who was this woman, really? And why was she hiding something so beautiful? That night, as the moon rose over Ojibaba, a group of men gathered at the village square, talking in low voices. Kola's father was among them. The voices grew tense, the words sharper. A strange fear was spreading. Someone claimed there had been a bad omen. The river had turned muddy overnight, and the chief priest warned that if nothing was done, the entire village's water supply would dry up. By morning, panic began to creep in. The women came from the river, complaining the fish were gone, the water shallow. The chief priest called for a meeting. People crowded into the square, their faces lined with worry. And then, for the first time in years, Adunni rose from her spot and walked slowly into the center of the gathering. Every eye turned to her. Children hid behind their mothers. Men stepped back. Her voice, when it came, was soft but steady. "I know what is happening to the river," she said. The crowd gasped. Kola held his breath. And that was the moment the whispers began to turn into shouts, some telling her to speak, others telling her to leave. But Adunni did not move. Instead, she looked at the chief priest and said words that made even him pale. "I was there the last time this happened." The crowd fell into a stunned silence. What did she mean? When was the last time? And how could she know? The questions hung in the air like a thick fog. The sun was high above the village square, yet a chill seemed to run through the crowd. People stared at Adunni as if she had just spoken the language of the dead. The chief priest, Baba Eakin, adjusted the beads around his neck and squinted at her. "Old woman," he said slowly, "what do you mean by the last time this happened? No one here has ever seen such a thing." Aduni's lips pressed into a thin line. "You have not, but your fathers did, and their fathers before them. I was there when the river spirit turned her back on this village." Murmurs rose like a swarm of bees. Some scoffed, some shook their heads in disbelief. "She's mad," a young man shouted. "She has always been mad." But others, especially the elders, leaned forward, curiosity mixing with unease. Baba Eakin raised his staff. "Silence." His voice carried the weight of years. "Let her speak." Aduni nodded. "When the river spirit is offended, she hides her waters and the land begins to die. It starts with the fish disappearing. Then the river turns muddy. If nothing is done, the wells will dry, the crops will fail, and famine will come." The words seemed to tighten the air around them. Mothers clutched their children. Farmers exchanged worried looks. "And how," Baba Eakin asked, "does one anger the river spirit?" Aduni's gaze swept the crowd. "By breaking the covenant your ancestors made with her." "What covenant?" someone called out. Aduni hesitated, then took a step closer to the chief priest. "I cannot tell it here. Too many ears, too many tongues. But I can help if you will trust me." That last sentence was like throwing oil on a fire. "Trust her?" a woman in the crowd cried. "This is the same one we call age." "She will curse us all," another man shouted. The square erupted into arguments, voices clashing, accusations flying. Some people wanted her gone, chased out of the village before nightfall. Others thought perhaps she spoke truth, especially the older ones who remembered faint whispers of a story their grandparents once told. Through it all, Kola watched her. She stood straight, unshaken, her eyes locked on Baba Eakin. The chief priest finally spoke, his voice cutting through the noise. "If you know the way to save this village, prove it. But if you speak lies..." He let the threat hang in the air. Aduni nodded. "I will prove it, but I will need to go to the river at moonrise. Alone." That sent another ripple of fear through the crowd. Alone at the river at night? Everyone knew the riverbank was no place for a human after dark. The spirits that lived there were not always kind. Baba Eakin hesitated, then turned to the crowd. "We will let her go. If she returns by morning with good news, we will hear the rest of her tale. If she does not..." He didn't need to finish. That night, as the moon climbed into sky, Aduni began her slow walk to the river. A few curious villagers followed at a distance, Kola among them. They kept to the shadows, not wanting to be seen. The path to the river was lined with tall grasses that swayed in the wind, whispering secrets. The air smelled of wet earth. Somewhere far away, a hyena laughed. Aduni reached the edge of the river and stopped. For a moment, she just stood there, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. Then she began a hum, a low, deep sound that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The sound grew stronger, weaving into the rhythm of the night, until it was no longer just her voice, but something older, deeper, joining her. The villagers hiding in the bushes shifted uneasily. Then, suddenly, the water began to stir, not like waves, but as if something beneath was moving, something big. And from the dark surface of the river, a shape began to rise. It was then that Kola's mouth went dry, because he knew whatever was coming out of that river wasn't human. The water swelled and curled, glistening under the moonlight, as if the river itself had grown a spine. Ripples turned to waves, and the waves gave birth to a figure, tall, shimmering, and crowned with strands of glowing waterweed. It was the river spirit. Her form was both beautiful and terrifying, her skin smooth like polished shells, her eyes as deep and dark as the river's heart. A necklace of stones hung around her neck, each stone pulsing faintly with light. Her voice, when it came, sounded like the rush of water over rocks. "Why do you call me, woman?" the spirit asked. The villagers hiding in the grass trembled. Some wanted to run, but they couldn't move. It was as if the spirit's gaze had pinned them to the earth. Aduni bowed her head, but did not kneel. "I have come to speak of mercy," she said. The spirit's eyes narrowed. Mercy for a people who have broken their word. Adunni did not flinch. They do not remember the covenant. The ones who made the promise are long dead. That is no excuse, the spirit replied, her voice rumbling through the ground. A promise to the river is a promise to life itself, and life must be honored. A long silence followed, filled only by the soft lap of water at the riverbank. Kola held his breath. Finally, the spirit spoke again. If they wish for my waters to flow freely once more, there is a price to pay. What price? Adunni asked. The spirit raised one long, dripping arm and pointed towards the northern hills. In the cave of Egan lies the stone of breath. It is guarded by shadows that do not sleep. Bring me the stone before the next moonrise, and I will forgive their trespass. Fail, and your village will dry and crack like the earth in drought. The wind picked up, carrying the sharp scent of river mud. Adunni nodded slowly. I will bring it. You. The spirit's voice dripped with doubt. This is not a task for the weak. I am not weak, Adunni said, her tone firm. The spirit studied her for a moment, then smiled, though it was not a warm smile. We shall see. And with that, her body melted back into the water, leaving only ripples behind. The villagers hiding in the grass exchanged frightened glances. The cave of Egan was no ordinary place. It was said to be a mouth in the earth that swallowed any who dared to enter. No one had returned from it in living memory. Adunni turned and began to walk back towards the village. She moved with the slow, steady steps of someone who had carried heavy burdens before. Kola, still crouched in the grass, watched her in awe. Something about the way she faced the spirit, without trembling, without begging, made him realize she was not like other people. By morning, the news had spread across Ojibaba. Some laughed at the idea of the old beggar going to cave. Others whispered that maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. At the village square, Baba Eakin met her with a serious expression. You truly mean to go? He asked. Yes, she said simply, but I will need help. Someone young, with strong legs and a brave heart. Before anyone else could speak, Kola stepped forward. I'll go. Gasps rose from the crowd. His mother tried to pull him back, but he stood firm. I'm not afraid, he said, though his heart pounded. Adunni's eyes softened. Then we leave at sunset. That evening, the two of them set off, the orange glow of the sun at their backs. They carried only a gourd of water, a small bag of roasted yam, and Adunni's staff. The road to the northern hills was long and narrow, snaking through thick forests and dry land where the air buzzed with unseen insects. As night fell, they reached the edge of the hills. The moon was high, casting pale light over jagged rocks. The entrance to the cave loomed ahead, wide and dark, breathing out a cold wind that smelled faintly of old rain and something else, something metallic. Kola swallowed hard. It's like the cave is alive, he whispered. Adunni said nothing. She stepped forward, her staff tapping against the stone. From inside the cave came a sound. Not the drip of water, not the rustle of bats. Something heavier, something moving. The sound echoed again, slow, deliberate, and far too heavy to be an animal's casual step. Kola's skin prickled. What is that? He whispered. Adunni's eyes stayed on the dark mouth of the cave. The first shadow, she said quietly. It has been waiting for us. The moonlight didn't dare enter the cave. The darkness inside was thick, almost solid, as if it had weight. Even the wind outside seemed afraid to pass the threshold. Adunni took a deep breath and stepped forward. Kola hesitated, then followed, clutching a small torch they had made from dry reeds. As soon as they crossed into the cave, the air changed, cool and damp, smelling of moss and something sour, like old blood. Their footsteps echoed, and the sound seemed to go on longer than it should, bouncing off walls they couldn't see. Then came the voice. It was low, like rocks grinding together, and it came from everywhere at once. Turn back, or lose your breath forever. Kola froze. His torchlight flickered wildly. Who's there? Adunni's voice was calm. Do not speak to it. Shadows grow stronger when they taste your fear. A shape peeled itself out of the darkness ahead. A tall, thin figure with limbs too long and a face like stretched leather. Its eyes glowed faintly white, and its mouth hung open in a silent scream. Cola's legs felt like wet clay. "A dunny!" "Walk!" she ordered. "Do not stop. Do not answer its questions." The shadow stepped closer, its movements jerky, like a puppet with tangled strings. "You carry the smell of the living," it said. "Give it to me." Cola's throat tightened, but he forced himself to move forward. The shadow paced them, gliding alongside, its face inches from Cola's. He could feel the cold seeping from it into his bones. Suddenly, it darted in front of them, blocking the narrow path. "You will not pass." A dunny lifted her staff, and for the first time, Cola saw strange carvings etched into the wood, spirals, symbols, and shapes that seemed to twist under the torchlight. She struck the ground once, and the sound rang through the cave like a bell. The shadow recoiled, hissing like water on hot iron. "Old words," it spat. "Where did you learn them?" A dunny's eyes were fierce. "From the same place you were born, from darkness. But I have walked further than you ever will." She struck the staff again, harder. The carvings glowed faintly, and the shadow let out a shrill, unnatural scream before melting back into the cave walls. Cola stood frozen, panting, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped the torch. A dunny didn't slow her steps. "That was only the first," she said. They moved deeper into the cave, the air growing colder, the path narrower. The ground beneath their feet became slick with moisture, and a faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. They turned a corner and found themselves in a vast chamber, the ceiling lost in darkness. In the center was a pool of perfectly still water, black as ink. The path continued on the other side, but there was no way around, only across. Cola crouched by the edge. "It's not deep," he whispered. "We can walk through." A dunny's voice was flat. "Do not touch it. This is the second trial." Even as she spoke, ripples began to spread across the pool, though no stone had been thrown. The surface bubbled, and pale, skeletal hands began to reach up from the depths. Cola stumbled back, his heart pounding. What are those?" "The ones who failed before us," a dunny said. The hands clawed at the edge, pulling half-formed bodies out of the water. Creatures with empty eye sockets and mouths gaping like they were forever gasping for air. They began to crawl towards the two travelers. A dunny gripped her staff tightly and whispered, "Stay behind me." The first of the creatures lunged. The creature lunged, water streaming from its hollow eyes, its bony fingers stretching toward Cola's throat. Before it could touch him, a dunny slammed her staff into the ground. The carvings lit up again, brighter this time, and a shockwave of pale light rippled across the chamber. The water thing screamed, a sound like stones grinding underwater, and stumbled back. But they did not vanish. More of them began to rise from the pool, their movements jerky, their bodies bending in ways no living thing should. Some crawled along the ground. Others climbed up the walls, clinging like pale crabs. "They won't stop," Cola gasped. "They will," a dunny said, though sweat shone on her forehead. "But it will cost me." Before Cola could ask what she meant, she untied the knot at the back of her scarf. It loosened and slipped, revealing a strip of shining hair, silver, but not from age. It caught the torchlight and seemed to glow faintly on its own. The creatures froze. Cola's breath caught. Your hair." "Not now," she snapped, though her voice was not unkind. She began to chant in a language Cola did not know. Her voice rose and fell like the river's current, and the silver in her hair seemed to spread, seeping down into the scarf until the whole cloth shimmered. The creatures hissed and shrank back into the pool, dissolving into ripples until the water lay still once more. Silence settled in the chamber. Cola stared at her. "You're not just some old woman." A dunny gave him a small, tired smile. "No, but the rest is for later. We have little time." They crossed the chamber on a narrow stone ledge that rose just above the water. The air grew warmer as they went deeper, the walls of the cave glistening with strange minerals that caught the torchlight. Finally, they reached a tunnel that sloped sharply downward. The sound of a heartbeat, slow, heavy, seemed to come from its depths. At the end of the tunnel was a door of solid stone, carved with spirals and the image of a serpent swallowing its tail. There was no handle, no lock, only a hollow at the center shaped like a human hand. "This is it," a Dunny murmured. Kola reached out, but she stopped him. "Only one who has bargained with the river can touch it. If you try, it will take your breath forever." She placed her palm in the hollow. The carvings lit up, the serpent's eyes glowing red, and the stone door slid open with a deep rumble. Inside was a small chamber, and in the middle of it lay the stone of breath, a smooth, round crystal, glowing softly as if lit from within. Every breath they took seemed easier, lighter in its presence. Kola's eyes widened. "We found it." But Aduni's face was grave. "Yes, and now comes the hardest part." Kola frowned. What could be harder than this? As if to answer, the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. From the shadows at the far end of the chamber, a low growl rolled toward them. Two glowing eyes opened, and a shape began to emerge, larger than a bull, its skin like dark stone, its teeth sharp as knives. The third trial had awakened. The creature stepped fully into the glow of the stone of breath, and Kola's knees nearly gave way. It was a stone beast, its body made of jagged rock, yet moving like flesh. Its head was shaped like a lion's skull, but its mouth held no tongue, only rows of teeth grinding together with a sound like breaking bones. Each step it took shook the floor, sending cracks across the chamber. Aduni didn't flinch. She planted her staff into the ground, the carvings flickering with weak light. "Stay behind me," she said quietly. Kola obeyed, but his heart was pounding so hard he thought the beast could hear it. The creature circled them, slow and deliberate, its glowing eyes fixed on Aduni. Then it spoke, not with a mouth, but inside their heads. "The stone is not for the unworthy. Leave or join the others in my belly." Aduni's voice was steady. "I have walked farther than this cave. I have spoken with the spirit who set you here. I will take the stone." The beast laughed, a sound like rocks collapsing into a pit. "Then you know the price." Kola looked at her sharply. "What price?" Aduni did not answer. The beast lunged. Aduni moved fast for someone her age, spinning her staff in an arc that struck the creature across the jaw. Sparks flew. The carvings on the staff flared bright for a heartbeat, then dimmed again. The beast didn't seem hurt, only angered. It swung a massive paw, and Aduni barely leapt aside. The blow smashed into the stone floor where she'd been standing, leaving a deep crater. Kola's fear boiled into desperation. "There's two of us. We can fight it together." "No!" Aduni barked, knocking him back just as the beast's tail swept across the chamber. The tail was like a spike chain, and the wind from it almost knocked Kola off his feet. The beast turned its gaze on him now, and his throat went dry. It stepped closer, each movement deliberate. Before it could strike, Aduni stepped between them and shoved Kola toward the tunnel. "Run." "I'm not leaving you," he shouted. She gave him a sharp look. "If I fall, the stone must still reach the river. You must carry it." It hit him then. Whatever price the beast had spoken of, it might be her life. Aduni struck the staff against the floor again, but this time the light in the carvings didn't flare. It poured out, silver and blinding, flowing up her arms and into her hair. Her scarf slipped entirely, and for the first time, Kola saw her fully. Her hair wasn't just silver. It shimmered like liquid moonlight, flowing even when the air was still. Her skin seemed to glow faintly, and around her neck hung a golden pendant with a swirling blue stone inside. The beast hesitated, its head tilting. I know you." Aduni's voice was low, almost sad. "Yes, I was the one who bound you here." Kola's mind reeled. Bound? She had been here before? The beast roared and charged, the ground trembling with its fury. Aduni met it head-on, striking its chest with the staff. Silver light exploded from the point of impact, and the beast howled, stumbling back. But it didn't fall. Kola's eyes darted to the stone of breath, glowing in its cradle of rock. If they could just grab it. Then he saw it. The cracks from the beast's steps had spread to the pedestal. One more heavy blow might shatter it, and the stone with it. The beast roared again, lowering its head for a killing strike. Aduni braced herself, light swirling around her like mist. Kola realized he had only seconds to act. Kola's chest burned with panic. but he forced his legs to move, while the beast lowered its head to strike a dunny. Kola sprinted toward the stone of breath. "Boy, no!" a dunny shouted, but her voice was drowned in the beast's roar. He leapt onto the cracked pedestal, grabbing the stone. The moment his fingers touched it, a rush of cold air filled his lungs. His chest felt lighter, stronger, as though he had been drowning his whole life and only now remembered how to breathe. But the beast had seen him. It spun away from a dunny and thundered toward Kola, its paws pounding the ground so hard dust rained from the ceiling. A dunny slammed her staff down again, sending a shock wave that knocked the beast sideways. "Run!" she commanded. Kola didn't hesitate. He clutched the stone to his chest and sprinted for the tunnel. Behind him, the beast roared in fury, shaking the cave. But a dunny wasn't following. He skidded to a stop and turned. "Come on!" Her silver hair shimmered as she stood in the center of the chamber, facing the beast alone. "Go, Kola! The stone must reach the river. It's the only way to save them." The beast lunged again, and a dunny met it with a burst of blinding light from her staff. The chamber filled with silver fire, shadows leaping across the walls. Kola wanted to run to her, to help, but the ground cracked beneath his feet. The chamber was collapsing. Through the chaos, a dunny's voice reached him, soft but clear. "Tell them the truth. Tell them I kept my promise." Before he could answer, the floor gave way. Kola tumbled down a narrow slope of rock, the stone of breath still in his grip. He landed hard in a lower tunnel, his torch sputtering but still lit. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding, and looked back. The tunnel behind him was blocked by falling rubble. A dunny was gone. For a moment, he just stood there, his breath sharp in his throat. Then he forced himself forward. The tunnel twisted and narrowed, finally opening into a slit of moonlight at the far end. He staggered out into the night air, gasping. The northern hills rose behind him, silent and dark. The village lay far below, tiny specks of firelight flickering in the distance. Clutching the stone, he began the long journey back. By the time he reached Ojibaba, dawn was breaking. The villagers gathered as he stumbled into the square, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dust. Baba Eakin stepped forward. "Kola, where's the old woman?" Kola swallowed hard. His voice trembled as he held out the stone. She stayed behind, to fight the guardian. The crowd murmured, some in disbelief, some in awe. Baba Eakin took the stone carefully, as if holding the beating heart of the earth itself. "We must take it to the river at once," he said. Kola's voice was stronger now. "There's more. She told me to tell you the truth about who she really was." The crowd leaned in, hanging on his words. And so Kola began to speak, repeating everything a dunny had told the beast, how she had once bound the guardian, how she had bargained with the river spirit generations ago, how she had been living among them in silence all these years, keeping watch for the day the covenant would be broken again. Mothers who had pulled their children away from her now covered their mouths in shame. Men who had spat at her feet stared at the ground. Baba Eakin's eyes glistened. She was the one who saved us long ago, and she came back to do it again. Before anyone could say more, a loud splash echoed from the direction of the river. People turned and gasps filled the air. The river was swelling, its waters clear and full once more. But the joy was mixed with sorrow, for Dunny had not returned with them. Then, just as Baba Eakin knelt to place a stone into the water, a ripple moved across its surface. A figure began to rise from the river. The ripple grew into a swell, and from the heart of the river she rose, a Dunny. Her scarf was gone, her silver hair flowing like a stream of moonlight over her shoulders. Her staff was nowhere to be seen, but around her neck still hung the golden pendant, glowing brighter than ever. The water clung to her, as though reluctant to let her go. The villagers gasped, some falling to their knees. Even Baba Eakin, who had seen many strange things in his life, lowered his head in respect. Kola's eyes widened. "You're alive." She smiled at him, a smile warmer than the sun after rain. "The guardian could not keep me. I made a bargain with the river spirit, one last time." From behind her, the river spirit emerged, her towering form gleaming in the early light. Her voice rolled like distant thunder. This woman has kept her word for more than one lifetime. When your ancestors first angered me, it was she who gave up her place in the world to dwell at the edge of yours, watching over you. She has walked the years unseen, so that when this day came, she could protect you again." The villagers stared in silence, the truth sinking in like heavy rain into dry earth. "I asked the stone of breath," the spirit continued, "and she brought it to me at great cost. Because of her, your waters will flow, your fields will flourish, and your children will live." The spirit reached out, cupping the stone in her watery hands. As it touched the river, light spread through the water, shimmering all the way to the horizon. The current quickened, fresh and strong. The people began to weep, not from fear, but from shame and gratitude. Mothers who once pulled their children away from a dunny now stepped forward, their eyes wet. Men who had spat at her feet bowed their heads. Baba Eakin spoke first. "A dunny! We wronged you. We judged without knowing. We feared what we should have honored." A dunny looked at them, not with anger, but with a calm that made their shame heavier. "Fear blinds a heart," she said softly. "It makes you see an enemy where there is a friend. But kindness opens the eyes." She turned to Kola, her gaze warm. "You saw me when no one else would. You listened. That is how a heart should be." Kola swallowed the lump in his throat. "I only did what was right." "That," she said, "is why the world needs more like you." The river spirit began to sink back into the water, her voice lingering in the air. "Remember this day. Keep the covenant. Honor the waters, and they will honor you." When the spirit was gone, the villagers gathered around a dunny, begging her to return to the heart of the village, to live among them in comfort. But she shook her head. "My place is still at the edge by the baobab tree. It is where I can see the road and those who may come needing help." From that day on, no one called her age again. The children ran to her with greetings, and the adults brought her food and water without being asked. And though she never asked for it, they built her a small shelter by the baobab, its doorway facing the market where she had once been ignored. Kola often sat with her there, listening to her stories, not all of them magical, but all of them full of wisdom. And in the seasons that followed, the river never ran dry again.